from Down Under.
Do or do not. There is no try.
G'day, mate. How you going?
Fantha from Down Under on Fantha Tracks Radio with my pal all the way from the States, from Florida. That's right, the man himself, Carl Wagner of Fandom Podcast Network. Hey, mate, how you going?
Well, you know, technically as a founder of Fandom Podcast Network on this podcast, doesn't that make me your boss?
Yeah, it kind of does.
Well, I'm doing well. Looking forward to today's conversation. Very timely as we're recording to May the 5th, this episode, of course, which means yesterday was May the 4th be with you.
That's right. Now, folks, obviously I do a podcast on that show as well called Lethal Mullet Podcast, all about the 1980s action films and beyond. But over here on the Fantha from Down Under, of course, we look at Star Wars. And I tell you what, we're going to be looking at a lot of fantastic Star Wars today with Kyle. Now, Kyle, when did you first see Star Wars?
Okay, so my first time seeing Star Wars, I was very, very young. I was still living in Alaska, and I saw Star Wars in the theater because it hung around for a very long time up in the theaters there. But I was still pretty young because I was born in 1975, so it was still pretty young. I remember little bits and pieces of it, but I actually remember more seeing Star Wars, the original film, where it really stuck with me was I saw it on VHS before Empire came out because somebody had picked up a oddball way to get it on VHS for me to watch it. But my true, really full remembering the full theater experience was definitely Empire Strikes Back.
It'd have to be, for me, was Return of the Jedi. But, however, I found out years ago that I'd actually been to I think it was 1970, 78 it must have been, when I was only 12 months years old or whatever it was. They were showing A New Hope in the drive-ins. So I actually saw it in the drive-in, apparently. I can't remember.
But what I do remember about Star Wars, too, is when HBO and Showtime and stuff were first coming out, especially HBO, it made the rounds on HBO.
Oh, wow. Now, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, got to love cable TV for continuing these traditions. Out here we have Foxtel, and even, I suppose, through the 90s with the prequels rise and stuff like that, we had a lot of those showings of not only the films, but those old behind-the-scenes features, which are hard to find these days. A lot of them used to be shown once a month on TV back in the 80s. And I think we're kind of missing that now with all these DVD features and Blu-ray features and digital features on the sides and stuff like that. But got to say, May the 4th be with you guys, because I tell you what, this is it. And, of course, if you follow Mark Hamill right now, of course, he's doing the whole week in tweets. So, of course, you got the May the 4th, and then you got May the 5th, which is the Sith Day.
Revenge of the 5th.
Revenge of the 5th. That's right. Now, what we're also going to be talking about tonight is something that's close to my heart, and it's close to Kyle's, is, of course, the prequel trilogy's first film, The Phantom Menace. It is not only a celebration of that because of, obviously, the anniversary, but also, when you look back on it, this was the start of a whole new era of a Star Wars. And they're celebrating that right now with Del Rey, with, of course, Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. Now, with Kavan Scott, we have Dooku, Jedi Lost. Now, folks, if you've got these, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I will say this, you're going to get an adventure with both eras. So you're going to get, obviously, Dooku, his first apprentice, with Raul Averos, which you're going to learn about, who is actually, if you listen to Claudia Gray in interviews, she said Benjamin Bratt. That's who she based this off. So you can imagine Benjamin Bratt in Jedi robes and twisting around death sticks. Really, no, death sticks, really. Then you've got Benjamin Bratt. But this is a great story. Obviously shows the split between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn about 7 years before Phantom Menace. So he was about a 17-year-old apprentice at the time. And then we also, going into Dooku Jedi Lost, we get to see him as an apprentice.
Yeah, no, I've been excited for these books. I haven't had a chance to sit down, and I'm probably going to go the audiobook route on them, but I'm looking forward to doing that. Real quick too, Adam, if you don't mind, I just want to give a quick shout out to remember Peter Mayhew, because
Oh, yes.
He very special man. He's always so gracious on the con circuit and was so kind to the fans. And obviously, I in my opinion, Chewbacca is one of the three most iconic characters to come out of Star Wars. So I just wanted to give a quick thank you to Peter Mayhew, wherever you are listening.
Yeah, it is. It's very sad the other day hearing his passing, and I remember seeing his family put up a post, obviously, about his passing. And I think, look, one of the great things is going back to what Yoda said is, rejoice in those who have joined the Force. And I think one of the things we can rejoice about is that Carrie will be there with open arms waiting for him.
Absolutely. So,
without a doubt. So, well, before we get into that any further, where can the folks here at Fantha from Down Under catch you on the web?
You can find me, and of course, starting at the Fandom Podcast Network's homepage at fpnet.podbean.com. And of course, we're also on all of your big podcast catchers, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. You can also find us on Facebook on our Facebook page. Just search for the Fandom Podcast Network. And of course, you can listen to me I am co-host of Culture Clash. You can hear me on Discoville, on some of our other special shows. And, you can always find me here making appearances with this crazy Australian on Fantha.
and when you don't catch me, you'll also catch, of course, the other co-founder and often co-host of many of those shows, Kevin, the Raider Nerd Reitzel, as well on there, who, of course, is a bit of a big hair metal nut, isn't he?
Yeah, but he has also been on vacation, trying to learn more about a proper quickening, shall we say?
Yes, and of course he doesn't know that Vancouver is actually Seacouver, apparently.
Yeah, Vancouver is Seacouver, and of course, when I do say quickening, I'm not talking about him learning how to mix the proper glass of chocolate milk.
Oh yeah, we have that out here in Australia too. The old quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice, I remember that. Nice. I've got to say, as we get into it with the Phantom Menace here, here's a film which I think when our family saw it, it was a midnight screening in 1999, of course. We weren't expecting such a huge turnout because, Star Wars has obviously been off the screens for quite a while. And yeah, we had the special editions a couple of years before, but they weren't the turnouts that this was. This was just packed to the walls with, people. Oh. And I think, when you go into a film of this magnitude, it's so pent up. I think hype now is much larger than it was then, but it was such a huge film to walk into.
Well, there's a lot of things you got to consider when you look back at 1999 when Phantom Menace came out. Yeah, we had the special editions a few years prior, and I think that kind of started putting a little bit of a feeler out there for how people were going to respond to something new, Star Wars. The internet was just coming into being. I remember we were all on dial-up connections still, and we were trying to download the Phantom Menace, leaving our phones on basically busy for 5 hours as we downloaded to play once the Phantom Menace trailer. The thing was, too, because you had and it's something that's happened again with Star Wars when Force Awakens came out, you had such a large time gap between new Star Wars material. And in this case, you didn't even have like a Clone Wars or Rebels or anything filling the gap there. Yes, you had the books and the comics and things like that, but nothing that was on a TV screen or a movie screen in the meantime. That was it. And then when they announced the Phantom Menace was coming, the hype was just amazing. I remember getting in line and waiting all day to buy tickets. This is before the internet. There was no Fandango. There was none of that. It was buy your ticket. And you didn't have assigned seating. So the day it came out, you were there again, crack of dawn, waiting to get into the theater so you could get a halfway decent seat. It was a huge deal. And I think when you look back at Phantom Menace, it's looked at through such an interesting scope because you had this initial, everybody wants something new Star Wars, so they automatically loved it. They had Star Wars blinders on, as I say. Then, after a few years, people started to kind of pick apart the Phantom Menace as they did all of the prequels, and I think it got knocked down a few pegs. But I think as time has passed again, there has been a little bit more of an appreciation for what was established in the Phantom Menace. And for me, the couple of things that stand out. It gave us one of the better characters, obviously, in Star Wars history in the Darth Maul. We've got again some amazing John Williams soundtrack. The Duel of the Fates is one of the all-time classic Star Wars musical score pieces at this point. And I think it established, if nothing else out of the prequels in general, it established Ewan McGregor as an essential part of the Star Wars universe with his portrayal of a young Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, it really did. Look, I mean, from the opening on the Trade Federation ship itself, you could see straight away he kind of stole, I think, some of the thunder from Liam. Liam went into this expecting to be the lead, which he was, of course, but he was really the mentor role the whole time. If you go back even to the scripts, the original scripts only had Obi-Wan doing all of this, and then you didn't meet Qui-Gon Jinn till they went to Coruscant. So it was always built around Ewan McGregor. And that's something I think that you kind of lose a little bit with Liam being there from the start. But I agree. Look, there's just so much there. I mean, the pod racing, I think, was one of the biggest things that I visually see, that Ben-Hur sort of chase, I suppose, if you like. And I think front and center, the Sith in this are in it more than any other film. We have Sidious. I mean, you know straight away who it is, obviously.
Yes, obviously.
But I think the fact that we're starting to see them really push their way. I mean, they're coming from being in the shadows. Once Maul's out, that's it. Game's on. And I think that's what's so great about it. But I think for me, I think I expected it to progress a lot quicker in this film. I remember reading some of the fanfic that was coming out just before the film, and everything was based around that trailer that we saw. Obviously the trailer, as you say, we're all trying to download on a 56K dial-up, and it's just not downloading no matter what you did. We downloaded that. We tried to download the Dungeons and Dragons trailer.
Oh, yeah.
Like, wow, this is going to be the greatest movie ever. Oh, no.
I had just put it out of my mind completely, and it's all your fault, Adam.
You know what I did? I literally watched that movie, and we all went back and got the animated Dungeons and Dragons out straight away. We said we need to wash our mind out with just watching the old show.
Exactly.
But I think
I was just going to say too. One of the things with the Phantom Menace too was it was a type of Star Wars we had never seen, because we were so used to the era of the rebellion versus the Empire, and now kind of going back into that past of seeing kind of the birth of the Empire. I think a lot of people weren't prepared for just how political the Phantom Menace was.
Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of politics there. A lot. This is very much, I think, it's very much the American system of politics. Is slightly different out here, even with like the no confidence vote and stuff like that. But to see that, with obviously Trade Federation being in there, so there's a lot about putting sanctions on countries like they do here, but on planets instead, and blocking trade and stuff like that as they do in embargoes. So it's all in there. It's all in what a real government would do and how they get around it. So I think this is actually, if not out of all the Star Wars films, a bit more realistic.
I can agree with that. I think one of the things too with this, with the Phantom Menace, and one of the reasons why for a long time it kind of got a little panned was it was noticeable. Even I can even go back to Return of the Jedi, and it's something George did, and in the aspect of George really tried to get things a little more kiddie. I think you even look in history, George even thinks Empire Strikes Back was a bit too dark. And I think that was one of the things that was kind of the flip side of these prequels was, as much as I love George is at best when he has somebody who gives him some checks and balances.
Yes.
And he did not have that with these prequels. And I think if he had the aspects that a lot of people get crazy about, like a Jar Jar Binks and the Gungans or the silliness of the battle droids, gets toned down enough, it's still there as an element, but I think it's accepted a lot better in that. And it's interesting when you look at the history of the Phantom Menace too, how a couple of the actors from there had gotten so vilified almost for no reason at all. And at least with Ahmad Best, it's so great to see how it's turned around for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because out here, I don't think there was that much negativity out here in Australia. I mean, you can blame people like Simon Pegg. Obviously, not only did they do that, but they also banked of it by putting it into like show like Spaced and stuff like that. There's just no call for it. It was directed at the actor for most of that vilification that went out. And it's a shame because he's a very talented actor. And if anything, his work with his body was just phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And of course, Jake Lloyd has been through his issues since this movie ended. And, I think it's one of the things I think in Star Wars too, that in the prequels was one of the issues is you had such a young Anakin, and then there was such a big leap to go from young Jake Lloyd to then Hayden Christensen, and the age differences. It was going to be hard on whatever child actor they put into that role because they weren't going to be able to continue on with it.
Oh no, 100%. I think that's the thing is, and maybe this could fall with Lucasfilm a little bit. I've always thought that with doing that, they should always, look down the line with whether it's Jake Lloyd or whoever it is, and, give a bit more support with them as far as like when they're doing publicity and stuff like in years to come. Obviously, they all do the road trips of going to all the different conventions, but I've always thought there should be a bit more support from Lucasfilm that way, and just the fact that helps them publicize it, gets them out there and gives them that strength networking.
Yeah, no, I agree, but on the flip side too, I mean, it's not negativity of Phantom Menace. It's looking back and being able to reflect. Phantom Menace really did a great job of expanding the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, it did,
and showing us what else was going on, especially in that time frame. And no Phantom Menace means there's no Clone Wars, and there's there's not going forward with that. So whether you like or dislike the Phantom Menace, you have to respect the fact that it established a whole new expansion of the Star Wars universe that for a lot of people, that is their Star Wars. And I'm not even necessarily talking about the next two prequel films. I'm talking about Clone Wars. I'm talking about things that spun out of that. No Phantom Menace, no Ahsoka Tano.
Oh, I agree. And one of the things about that is that, I mean, not only do we have the setup, right? We have that there. What we do have also is this whole new era of characters. I mean, look at the Jedi Council. You got people like Yaddle, who I can't even remember seeing Yaddle in the other films. I think that George said, we got somebody that's too much like Yoda. That's going to probably, think, this race might have a lot more people out there. I think, they kept that aside for episodes 2 and 3, I think. I didn't see Yaddle in the group for those. But people like, obviously, Kiadi Mundi, who would become a much larger role, as Stacey Teen as well. I mean, these are just great little characters. And it started to feel like all the other Star Wars films is that we got these strong characters in background parts, which we'll hear more about, like, obviously, Depa Billaba, who ends up being Windu's confidant, I suppose, as well, because she was trained that way down from, not only was Mace Windu trained her, but also then she trained Kanan.
Yeah, exactly. So
Rebels. Yeah, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, so really it was Phantom Menace that really established like the world of this whole new generation. And I think when we look back on that, that's why the Phantom Menace is such an important film, is because that is the world builder for, I think, how Star Wars has been since 1999.
Oh, big time. I mean, it's just huge. So I've got to pick out one of the great characters, obviously one of the big ones that really gets the ball rolling for the whole series, Qui-Gon Jinn, Rogue Jedi Master, can we say? What do we reckon of it?
I was kind of thinking more like hippie Jedi Master.
He really is, isn't he? I mean, I think, you look back on it and you think he never did anything that they asked.
Yeah, no, he went whatever he felt it was his own direction, and this is at a time when everybody was kind of having a little fun with Liam Neeson because he was always ending up in these mentor roles. He was in this, he was in Aslan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He played Aslan in that, so he was always ending up in these kind of mentor roles, but it fits for him and the kind of presence he carries. And I thought it brought in a very interesting dynamic because being able to see Qui-Gon really helped us get a better understanding of Obi-Wan as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can start to see where he would have parts of that because he's very strict in these movies, especially these first two. He's not ready to break away from tradition. I think that takes him that little bit longer after episode 3 that he becomes a bit of a rogue master himself.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and it's always been one of the more fascinating questions of what if Qui-Gon would have lived, and what would have that done for Anakin?
Yeah, would he have been tempted by the dark side like he was?
Yeah, or I mean, would have Qui-Gon been able to figure out who Darth Sidious was?
Well, that's it. I mean, would he be able to, or did he even know? That's the big trick.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But I don't know if he necessarily knew before he died, but I think he would have figured it out. I think Qui-Gon would have figured it out a lot sooner than anybody else did.
That's right. Now, by the time we get to this film, by obviously the books themselves, they say that Qui-Gon's taken on 2 apprentices previous. So I think in the old canon it was Xanatos that they had. But by the time he gets to Obi-Wan, he's had at least a couple of apprentices.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, he was obviously considered by the Jedi to be one of the better training Jedi masters for training apprentices. Mm-hmm. Maybe because he taught them to think a little independently as well.
Yeah, I agree. Now, here's what's interesting. Back in 1997, when they were starting to cast these movies, guess who was approached before Liam?
Who was that?
Russell Crowe.
See, that would have been a bad fit. Would have been a.
Can you imagine the Gladiator himself doing that stuff?
Not for the way Qui-Gon was portrayed. Russell Crowe would have been a bad fit for that.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've watched the or even look at the storyboards for Phantom Menace. They'd already pretty much chosen Liam Neeson in that role. So I kind of wonder, was it Obi-Wan Kenobi that Russell was down for?
Could have been possible, but I think Russell at that time would have been a little too old to play Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he's already in his mid-30s.
Yeah, I mean, Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan Kenobi for so many people. And in a way, he is for me as well because, Sir Alec Guinness, we only got him really at the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi's lifespan. So really, the Obi-Wan Kenobi that we saw develop with Ewan McGregor and through these films and through Clone Wars, of course, you got to throw in James Arnold Taylor and there obviously as well, but that's the Obi-Wan that I think most people love, and that's why there's still, and I think it's become a popular character. There's still that demand for something to give Ewan McGregor one last chance to play Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, definitely. And I've always told people if you want to see what an Alec Guinness would have been like as an Obi-Wan Kenobi in that era, Revenge of the Sith and all that, go back to the River Kwai.
Oh, yeah.
The bridge on the River Kwai, and just imagine not just the mustache, but a beard, and there you go. That's pretty much the era.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, it's so interesting, and I know I keep coming back to this, but again, the foundation that this movie lays, because even though it was a long time between the prequels and the newest trilogy, there's still a lot of elements from those prequels that I feel are inherently involved in the new trilogy.
Oh yeah, big time.
And I think it's more. Everywhere. Yeah, I think it's more of the stylistic feel of the films more than anything. I just don't, and that's the one thing, I truly do believe, and this is something that both the prequel trilogy and the newest trilogy have not met in their magic side is, the effects and the feel of that original trilogy is something I don't think can ever be matched, and it's not fair to expect that to be matched. But there's just something about the original trilogy there's a magic in there for me. And again, it's because that's what I grew up on, and that's where when I was a child, and that's where my sense of wonderment came from. There's a magic in that original trilogy that the prequels and this newest trilogy just haven't been quite able to reach and capture. But again, that's partly from a generational thing for me as well.
I think a very fair point there. I think the one thing, though, that the other two trilogies have that doesn't, especially this film has, that none of the others have, the best Jedi action you're ever going to see, is particularly the lightsaber battles, obviously between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, and even, obviously, Qui-Gon. But even when they're smashing through battle droids, this really is a Jedi film.
Oh yeah, the prequels are about the Jedi more than any of the other films in the Star Wars universe. The prequels are about the Jedi's films,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really interesting because it was the Jedi's own hubris that took them down, and it's really interesting to see. And I think it brought a very interesting perspective for everybody to see where the Jedi was at the beginning of Phantom Menace, because they were kind of still the power of in the universe outside of the Republic, and it was just interesting to it was especially at the time that film came out, because we read it in the books and things like that, but to actually see it on screen and see the importance of the Jedi, see the Jedi Council, things like that, all for the first time on a screen, I think that was very powerful. And again, it's all those little things with the Phantom Menace that really it is an important film in Star Wars lore.
It is. Now, we've got to talk about the big elephant in the room. It was something that when I first saw the trailer, I'm going, what was George thinking? I mean, really? Let's talk about, of course, the Padawan haircut.
The bowl. Yeah.
Of course, we're talking about the sort of, what do you call it? It's this cut, this sort of spike with the little pigtail at the top and the little braid.
Yeah, I don't quite understand that. I think he was trying to go for a particular look, but it might not have worked so well.
I mean, people were actually getting this haircut. This is what's really weird. People were even getting hair extensions to put onto their sideburns so they get that little plait happening. I remember seeing that in the late 90s.
Well, when it comes to people in their hair, they do crazy things sometimes.
That's right. But let's just say some of the best lightsabers I've ever seen. These still are the best. I even think they're better than the ones in the original trilogy, particularly Obi-Wan's. I think Obi-Wan's is fantastic. Looks like a beast.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's the aspect of going back to when things were good and things were booming in the universe. Star Wars is at a very down time. So, and the Jedi stuff is relics at that point. It truly is. So in this case, we're seeing everything in its prime and at its height. We're at the apex of the Jedi Mountain, as they would say.
Now, obviously, we have a huge new enemy in this. Obviously, the Trade Federation, which pretty much is the proto-empire, I suppose. I mean, this was used as a stepping stone to build, obviously, the galactic empire. But what's great about this, the opening, we get to see, obviously, the battle droids. They're absolutely useless. They get cut to pieces. After we have that weird scene where he goes, Obi-Wan, Dioxis. Why don't you just say, don't breathe? I mean, really, come on, Liam, what are you doing? But anyway, one of the great things is they cut them to pieces, and then we get these droideka, destroyer droids, which is one of the most interesting designs, I think, in the entire series.
Oh, yeah, I love the destroyers. The destroyers were a great design and very powerful, and they looked intimidating enough to push back the Jedi. The thing with the whole thing with the Trade Federation, again, this is one of those times, too, where George needed somebody to kind of balance him out a little bit, because they could have been just dialed down just enough to really be a very threatening thing, but they never felt that threatening to me. They never felt like on that imperial level as far as like these people are a real threat.
Yeah, I mean, there's interesting things here and there, like the droid starfighters, when they're in that starfighter mode, they do kind of look like TIE fighters. The landing ships look beastie, but the rest of it, the design, to me personally, is all over the place. I think the MTT, that huge roving vehicle that unloads all the obviously Trade Federation droids in that little motion, I thought that was great. But the one thing I thought that they could really, I suppose, tone down that Flash Gordon aspect is the war freighters. So those huge Trade Federation ships with the disc in the middle.
Yeah,
Death Star. Yeah.
Now I will say this: I've always been kind of a fan. I've loved the design of the Naboo starfighter.
Oh yeah, it's kind of good, isn't it?
Well, that, and you throw the little bit of extra slick shine on that, but I just thought everything designed as far as Naboo was had a very unique look, and obviously we haven't talked about Amidala yet, and just the beautiful makeup and costume designs that Natalie Portman got to wear in Phantom Menace.
Just amazing, isn't it? I mean, this is very. If anything, George always wanted to make a Flash Gordon. This is the closest he ever got to Flash Gordon. I think this film.
Yeah, there's a lot of those type of elements, especially in kind of the outlandishness of it.
Yes, without a doubt, and even just some of those Trade Federation communiques where they have obviously the little dial open up, and it's Amidala talking, and then the mirror goes. That was used all through Flash Gordon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there was a lot of that in there for George. It truly is amazing to me how, when we are able to go back and look, how you see it through a different light as history goes by. And I think the Phantom Menace has been all over the place in history. It's been loved, it's been hated, it's been panned, it's been praised. And I think right now people are kind of at a happy medium with it. They respect it for what it's done for Star Wars, but they know it's definitely not the best film in the Star Wars series.
No, and I think that's the thing is, like, you go back to it. I mean, even just going through some of the books now, we're going through the DK book, and what gets me is the effort that went into just the design alone. I mean, you look at the Royal Starship, for example. I mean, that's such a unique design. One of the things that people forget is a lot of these designs were done also as practicals. I mean, there's more practical design and effects in this film than people realize.
Oh yeah, Lucas didn't go really full on digital until Attack of the Clones, and
yeah, that's when he went full digital.
And you can tell, but you know, that's the one thing. No matter what you can agree with or not, the designs and the originality of Star Wars has always been there. And the Phantom Menace, again, we didn't know what to expect from Star Wars in the Phantom Menace, and it built this world and this appearance that was outstanding.
I mean, look at Otto Gunga. I mean, who could have come up with Otto Gunga other than George Lucas?
Yeah, maybe Spielberg, but that's about it.
I mean, I think this film gets as close to Return of the Jedi when it comes to the wacky characters in that first part when they get trapped down there.
Oh no, I agree. I think one of the things with the Phantom Menace is it makes you realize that Return of the Jedi was more closer to what a Lucas version, a full Lucas vision than a full version of Star Wars that Lucas wanted compared to what even Star Wars was and what Empire turned out to be. I think you look at the trilogies, especially Phantom Menace, that's kind of, I think, what Lucas had always kind of envisioned for Star Wars.
Yeah, that's what he wanted, I think, for A New Hope, was more along those lines.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and it makes for very interesting discussion, and everybody's got a different opinion on it, but I don't think there's necessarily a wrong opinion when it comes to Phantom Menace.
No, it is what it is. I mean, there's so many things that open up to obviously the future, and I think one of the great things is the work that Doug Chang did, and obviously Ian McCaig and all the guys and the girls that worked on that team for the design work. I mean, look at the scimitar. Obviously, the ship used by Darth Maul. That is obviously, a hybrid of both the Star Destroyer and a TIE fighter.
No, yeah, most definitely. And, you look at, one of the things to me is John Williams coming back and just providing this absolutely amazing score for this film as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean
Williams, I think, knocked out probably his best in this.
Yeah, I can agree with that, because I look at, again, the end fight scene between Obi-Wan, Maul, and Qui-Gon. Without Duel of the Fates, that fight scene drops a few notches.
Yeah, you needed that.
I mean, the music. I mean, it's been great through all the Star Wars films, but I think especially in this one, it really did set up a lot of the feel of the film.
Oh, it did. And I think the thing is, without that being there, in that sort of, I suppose, the chorus of music that's there, the chorus of singers, it just gives it such weight.
Exactly. And I mean, and it makes that moment, that fight and that moment just feel so much more vibrant.
But I've got to say something. Out of all the pod races, I always thought Sebulba was Sebulda.
Ah. Yeah, there's a little bit of hard understanding in some of that language at times.
It's just crazy. But I've got to say, that's probably one of the things that came out of that merchandise-wise was a great game, Episode 1 Racer.
Yeah, the pod racing game. That was a classic. That was
great.
Board game.
It was. And what I loved about it was the fact that with that game, all the cutscenes, you had to work to get your parts and you had to really work it. But the racing, everything like that was just so damn fun.
Oh yeah, it was a very fun game, and I think the pod racing still to this day is one of the most standout scenes in Star Wars history.
It really is. It's fantastic. I mean, we've got speeder chases and stuff like that. Apparently, we've got one in the next film, which is just as big.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see what that is. But I mean, with the Phantom Menace, they brought so many different mixes of the elements. I mean, you had Tatooine in the harsh environment there. We actually had the undersea city of the Gungans, which I thought was actually quite beautiful to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the design of their vehicles and such, that they were kind of had an undersea feel to them.
And of course, we got Boss Naz, played by one of our favourites. These high schools from Phrygia, Gordon's alive.
Exactly. Even if you have a little fun at the Gungans were definitely the embodiment of Ewoks for George Lucas.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now, if Kevin's listening to this, I want Kevin to answer, what is the Highlander tie to Phantom Menace? I'm sure Kyle already knows this.
Actually, I don't.
I'll give you a clue. Think of a character from Naboo. Close to the Queen.
I'm drawing a blank.
Captain who?
I can't think. I know who you're referring to, but I can't think of the character's name.
Captain Panaka.
Yeah, he was in Highlander.
That's right. Of course, he's friends with, of course, Lambert's McLeod in that one too. So yeah, there's always a drawback to other shows and stuff like that, and other movies when they do that sort of stuff. It's brilliant.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Once you start working, especially in like the sci-fi film world, you tend to appear in a lot of movies and be able to play a little 6 degrees of separation about it.
Certainly do. Now, obviously, we had Star Wars Celebration recently, and of course, one of the big ones is the reveal of the show The Mandalorian. And of course, we've got quite an amazing cast. Cull Gugino, we've obviously got it there. We've also got, hang on, did I say that wrong? No, not Cull. I'm thinking of the actress from
Gina Carano. You're thinking
Gina Carano. Yeah. Now, what's great about this is the technology that's being used on The Mandalorian. So, I mean, the cast itself, we've got Pedro Pascal, obviously, as we say, Gina Carano, and Carl Weathers returning to an action role.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. And what's even more impressive is the list of directors on this show.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Taika, we've got, he's also playing a character apparently in this, and one of the others that's apparently a slippery character is Werner Herzog. Now, we're talking about a major director there, art house director.
Let's not forget. Let's also not forget Bryce Dallas Howard directed an episode, and remember, she will be appearing in an episode.
That's right. I mean, it's just crazy. You look at it, so it's coming out this November, and basically it's about a lone Mandalorian gunfighter beyond the reaches of the Republic, basically around the time of Force Awakens, I suppose. But what's great about this is...
My understanding is it's actually going to be a little bit closer to where Return of the Jedi ended than it is going to be the beginning of Force Awakens.
I mean, you look at the outfit, it's classic Mandalorian, and obviously we even see on his backpack, he's got a weapon that was used in the holiday special.
Yes, the feel of the design is a little bit more towards the holiday special Mandalorian than it is what we've come to know, but I'm very excited for this. In fact, I can honestly say I think I'm a little more excited for The Mandalorian than I am Episode 9 at this point. I think this is a big deal for Disney, and it's a big deal for the future of Disney because it's the first time they've handed Dave Filoni live action directing work. And I think
That's right.
that's a pretty big deal because I think a lot of people feel that Dave really is going to be the man who leads Star Wars into the next generation.
Look, I mean, there's even people that say it should have happened now. It should have happened, maybe a couple of years into Kathleen's. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Iger's, choice about what happens now because it's Disney owning this. But it's clear this is crunch time for Filoni. If this works, it's going to be really succeeding his direction. At the end of the day, it'd be very interesting to see. I mean, you got Favreau obviously there as well. But what's great about this is the technology they're using, very limited sets, but they're using a lot of green screen. And I think that really gets back to the imagination of these actors to really push it around.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, though, there is one very cool thing that happened was they needed stormtrooper extras. And what did Jon Favreau do and Dave Filoni do? They reached out to the 501st and then asked a bunch of the 501st people to come down. And they did, and they're all extras in The Mandalorian. But even better is the aspect of Filoni and Favreau gave them all certificates saying now that their costumes are official Star Wars props.
Oh, wow. Check that out. That is awesome. Can you imagine anyone that's done cosplay and spent that time putting that together, they're going to love that.
Yeah, no, and that's just such a cool thing to do. But I'm really excited. We're going to see a part of the Star Wars universe we've never really seen before. I'm really excited for this. I'm excited to see what they do with Star Wars on television, even if it is a streaming service. And I think this is big because we know that after Episode 9, we're going to have this hiatus on films. And I think what is going to happen with Disney Plus, and apparently The Mandalorian has already been renewed for a second season. And we also know we have the Cassian Andor series coming as well. So I think Disney Plus is going to be a big factor of filling the gap while we wait for the next, whatever's going to be the next Star Wars movie after Episode 9.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around where they just greenlight a second season without even looking at it. I mean, they must be confident.
Well, I think they have every right to be very confident. It looks fantastic from what we've seen of it already. And two, when it's your streaming service and you own it, and it's Star Wars, you got to feel pretty confident in it.
Yeah, I mean, you're the one that's putting it out. Yeah, I mean, it has to be. It's brilliant. I mean, considering that once Game of Thrones is over, what are people going to turn to is this and Marvel?
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, 2019 is such an this is going to be a big change year for fandom because we have Marvel basically hitting their apex mountain, and we are done with this 11-year experiment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe of this Infinity Saga. Yes, we have more Marvel coming, but I don't think it's going to be quite the same. It's going to be a little different because we're moving forward into a new phase of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how people react to that. Obviously, the end of Game of Thrones, which I think is going to really earmark the end of an era of television, and that is the water cooler television, where you have to be there every week to talk about it at that set time, or it's going to get spoiled for you. Even though, yes, I know Disney Plus is putting The Mandalorian out on a weekly basis. It won't be all episodes on hand. It's still going to be a little different because it's in a streaming environment, where with Thrones, it's appointment television, and I don't know if we will have that anymore when Thrones is done. And, of course, we have a big change in Star Wars, too, with Episode 9 being the end of this Skywalker saga and the end of the story of the original trilogy. So I think I think we're kind of leaping into a little bit of the great unknown after 2019.
And I think people are ready for it.
Oh, I think it's something that's needed. I think it's going to be a lot of change. It's going to be what we get and how we consume it, because how we consume our fandom and our media is changing on a hourly basis almost.
It is. It's almost too quick, when you look at it. It's amazing just how fast some of these are. I mean, there's even rumours that Warner Brothers are looking at a streaming service, and obviously one of the big ones they've headed up before in the 80s was Mad Max. Could we see a Mad Max streaming service?
I don't know if we'll see a Mad Max. Oh, well, show, it's a possibility. I mean, I think right now anything's on the table because of streaming and because it's owned directly. And they can have a little more control of the content. There's a lot of stores that could be open that were never opened before.
Oh, 100%. I'm keen to see where they're going. Now, before we wrap, got to ask your opinion on what you want to, well, what do you want to see in episode 9? What would make you happy to wrap up this series?
What I want to see in episode 9 is I want to see truly a finale to the Skywalker saga. I don't want to have it be where there's something hanging out there. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, let's retcon whatever happened in The Last Jedi. I don't necessarily know about that, because what happened in The Last Jedi is what happened, and it's there. It's part of canon. Mm-hmm. Maybe clean it up a little bit, but that doesn't mean retconning. It means maybe clarifying some things. I think, too, it's what I'm hoping for with this is that we can get a sense of closure on Star Wars, so whatever next film is coming next can really feel new and fresh. I mean, I am as much as I love Rogue One and I truly love Solo, and I do hope maybe Disney Plus is the way we get some more stories in that Solo universe. Kind of, Emilia Clarke's about to have her schedule free up pretty well here, so I would love to see something like that. But I really want to see a Star Wars in an area where we've never been there before, and it feels fresh and new again. And as much as I love aspects about this newest trilogy, is Force Awakens and everything like that, I'm ready for the book, this large book that we call the Skywalker saga, to hit its final chapter and be closed, and let us move on to something fresh and something new.
And the games have done it so well with their story, so I figure, why not?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and I think that's gonna, when we look back on it, one of the things we're going to look at with this last trilogy is that you had a directional bump in the middle of it, and I don't, it's been said, it's been talked about, and I look at it this way: it's going to be very interesting to see. Because I think there's gonna be, the best word I can put forward is a course correction, and I don't necessarily mean it's completely changing everything, but there's going to be some steering, and I still think there's going to be some stuff that was established in The Last Jedi that is going to get retconned a little bit by events in Episode 9, because
it's inevitable. I
mean, I don't think there's a way around it, unfortunately, but I think what the hope is for me right now with Episode 9 is it's able to close the book in a somewhat satisfactory ending for the Skywalker saga, but really start leaving the door open for a full range of other possibilities in the Star Wars universe going forward with whatever new films we are going to have, or even TV series on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. I mean, and again, the doors should be flooding open for all these different avenues of where things can go, but just fresh ones, new ones. That's what we want to see. So,
g'day, how you going? This is how you can catch me on the web. That's right, your host, Adam O'Brien, the Fantha from Down Under. You can catch it Obi Pop Culture on both Twitter and Instagram. You can also catch me on the one, the only Fandom Podcast Network's Lethal Mullet Podcast. But check out Fantha Tracks itself. Check it out at fanthatracks.com. All your Star Wars news in one single file.